Hello out there, and welcome to the latest edition of the Psych Tech at Work podcast. I am your host, Dr. Charles Handler, and boy, oh boy, do the guests just keep getting better and better? I think so. And I'm super excited to have another all-star guest, and Ash Wallvoord. She is the Chief Learning Officer at a little company you might have heard of called Verizon. And Ash knows a thing or two about skills-based hiring, and that's why I'm so excited to have her on the show today to talk about what Verizon has doing in what I feel like is a world-class skills-based hiring program. And it's kind of going to show you what the haves and have-nots have going on when it comes to skills-based hiring, because there is a lot of hype out there. And the good news is it's not all hype. There's substance. And so Ash is going to tell us about what Verizon's doing, but also just talk more globally about best practices, share knowledge with everyone. And if you're interested in skills-based hiring, you are in the right place. Hang tight, get ready, and let's go. Welcome, Ash. How are you today?
Charles, I'm doing great. It's a great day in the neighborhood. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you're talking to us live from Baton Rouge, right?
That's right. Baton Rouge, oppressive humidity, and we moved right in from crawfish season to hurricane season, so you can't beat it.
I know. I'm 70 miles down the pike from you, and I spent 5 great years at LSU. It was amazing for grad school, so love it, and try to get back for the football games.
That's right.
Which is always a lot of fun. Do you go?
My husband works in sports, so we are always involved somehow. So we're super excited about first game this weekend.
Yep, we got to win. I think we lost the last 5 in a row or something. Playing a really good team. Isn't that how it goes? Well, we won't think about that today, but we're going to definitely put some positive vibes going on that direction. So tell us a little bit about yourself and, kind of what you're up to today. I'll just share, it's going to be all skills-based hiring all day. And that is a passionate topic of mine, and I know yours, and you're executing it at a very high level. So I can't wait to share about that. And Mayda Tokens has been loaded with like 15 documents, some that you provided, some that I provided. So she should have some good context. The main thing with her, she's kind of random, but she likes to talk. So I always say, hey, be brief. So I'm going to ask her to welcome you. I couldn't get your LinkedIn URL in there. I'm still monkeying around with it. So she may or may not know who you are, but it'll be pretty interesting to find out. So let's see. Hi, Mayda. Welcome to the show. This is a live podcast recording, and you're here. And I'd love for you to say hello to our guest, Ash. She's coming to us from Baton Rouge. She's into skills-based hiring, just like me. Please be extremely brief, only a couple sentences.
Hello, Ash. It's fantastic to have you here from Baton Rouge. I'm excited to dive into the world of skills-based hiring with you. It's such an important topic.
Good deal. Do you have a question for Ash to kind of kick us off? We haven't got into the real heft of the show here, but maybe you have a question for her, a very brief question that she may be able to answer about skills-based hiring.
Absolutely. In a nutshell, Ash, what do you see as the biggest barrier to implementing skills-based hiring practices in organizations, and how can they overcome it?
I appreciate it, Mayda. I think there's a couple of things going on, Mayda. One is that organizations can have a lot of struggles with doing things at scale. And so skills-based hiring, skills-based anything gets really exciting and really powerful when you can find a way to do it at scale. So that's number one. Number two, the HR tech has just really exploded. And so a lot of HR practitioners are used to working with a benchmark or a best practice. And we're finding this to be a place where you really have to forge your own path and be super involved in design and the art of the possible. And so those are two things that can make skills-based hiring super tricky for organizations right now.
Awesome. That is a good answer and a good lead in. So before we really jump in, I think from a contextual standpoint, it's such a hot topic and everybody's talking about it. You hear it everywhere. And that's a good thing because I think it's very important. But I also think the hype cycle really focuses maybe on the wrong things, or it's just very short cited, right? And when I think about that, I just think about the idea that a skills test alone, or not looking at a resume or whatever, especially when you're selling these things, or you're selling the talent intelligence about skills, the biggest thing that kind of, I don't know, irks me or whatever, it's just a limitation, is nobody defines a skill a lot of times, in the market. It's just this general term that people throw around. And when you see how skills are documented and stuff for people, a lot of times I feel like there's nothing there. So comment on that. I'm really interested to hear your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one miss is that at the end of the day, for us, this is really about business enablement. This is about supporting, different components of what really should be like an end-to-end talent strategy. And I think, some of what you're describing is, exponentially a struggle because of just trying to go after something that's super popular, trying to check the box, and not understanding that to do is not enough. It has to be to do well, and what is the impact. So that's where you start to get these like very empty skills promises where, technically you implemented the solution, but it has no benefit to your business. So we've got to get back to a place where people realize that we are here at the enablement of the business strategy, or more broadly, the enablement of employee career and movement too, like what we pick a lens. But I think that's where a lot of the broken pieces are being fed from.
Definitely. It's just such an all-encompassing thing. And I can't wait. We'll dig in a little. I'd like to ask Mayda just, what's her definition of a skill? And, and I'd like her to access, some of the stuff that we provided in her context folder. Hey, Mayda, we're starting to talk about the skills aspect of skills-based hiring and what a skill is. And in your experience, how have you seen people define a skill? And do you think that they do a good job in the context of skills-based hiring? Again, be brief, just a couple sentences is all we need.
The age-old debate of what is a skill. It's often defined as a specific ability to perform a task or a competency that can be measured. However, in the context of skills-based hiring, many organizations still cling to rigid definitions, which can overlook the nuances of transferable skills and real-world experiences. So while they have a framework, they often miss the richness of what skills truly entail.
Okay, Ash, what do you think of that response? If it's not right, correct her.
I think Mayda's got some good categories there. I think she's right that skills are probably going to always be treated as a multi-pronged kind of ecosystem. I do passionately believe that we have got to tackle the fact that skills will always be a multi-source data kind of world. And that's something that IO psychologists can both really win at and also really struggle with. We can win with that, in terms of, advanced methodology and optimizing analysis, but the world of real world data can immediately break that. And so I think it's a good definition. I would just also add that I think as IO psychologists, we have to figure out how much of it matters. Many of my colleagues have the opinion, some of the flavors you just shared, Charles, as well, with sort of the definition of a skill has been kind of compromised. It's easy for technology venture companies to sort of just call anything a skill, and that is really infiltrating and kind of poisoning our sacred world. But I think that the position it puts us in is, let's love the problem and let's start putting it to the test and make sure that we can not just operate only based on, for me, my own ivory tower and my background and what I know to be reliable, but also let's hold the partners accountable. And I think that that's a real opportunity in this space.
For sure. I see it as kind of bookends. I mean, first of all, I do a lot of taxonomy building, especially for some of the startups I'm working for, but across my whole career, really in a lot of interesting ways to say, here's all the things about a person. How do we divide those up into specific types, the old KSAOs and competencies, and how can you put those into kind of a lexicon that describes the different things? Because we're going to want to measure those things, right? And that's the that's one side of the bookend. The other side of the bookend is the evidence-based stuff that you get when you look to operationalize those things, measure them, and see how they impact business results. Both of those bookends are often missing, right? And you can't measure what you can't define, and you can't understand how well all this work you're doing is actually adding value unless you kind of close the loop a little. So across the board, that seems to be some missing stuff that if people could do that, or organizations could do that, they'd find themselves maybe in a different place with this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think that in order for them to do that, we have to all realize like this isn't just a chance to be trendy, like this has to be the business imperative. Like, how are you going to align, your talent strategy with whatever's going on with your business? Are there evolving demands? Is the market, creating pressure? And then, I love the idea of the bookends, Charles. For me, it's very much, I want to challenge, I want to disrupt, I want to help us, I want the science to jump back in the game and start driving and influencing the tech even more, theory too. So I think that, as if we can start to lock arms and really look at what impacts the business, what is leading to the outcomes, I think we may be able to also improve the science too, help it kind of catch up. I think there could be some unexpected sources of real quality, in this skills-based world.
Definitely. And we're capturing so much data now, it's just been like pulling teeth in my experience, getting the data from the business to be able to, find the answers. So super impressed. I saw my favorite SIOP session in a long time because of so many of the good things that, organizations are doing in this realm, and people need to know about it. I would love to hear a little bit about your skills-based hiring journey at Verizon and just what it takes. So kind of sequentially, but the first thing I'm going to do is ask Mayda what she knows about your skills-based hiring program, and just, and to summarize it a little bit to give us a context to get started. How's that sound?
Love it.
Mayda, what do you know about the specific skills-based hiring program that Verizon has worked so hard to create, maintain, and really nourish? So tell us a little bit about that based on, your context files or what else you want to access. And be brief, again, just a couple sentences.
Verizon has developed a comprehensive skills-based hiring program that emphasizes the importance of skills over traditional degree requirements. By streamlining their job architecture and leveraging AI-driven insights, they aim to enhance internal mobility and career development opportunities for employees, ensuring that skills align with evolving business needs. This initiative not only supports workforce diversity, but also addresses the talent shortages by tapping into a broader pool of candidates who possess the necessary skills, regardless of their educational background.
All right. So, Ash, how did she do?
She did well. I will say there are some unique things that we have been really lucky to be able to incorporate into our approach that, they can't always come across in, articles and podcasts or what have you. So if to supplement Mayda, I think timing means everything. I'm also really, really lucky to be able to work for a company that is investing in its talent strategy. So at Verizon, as far back as 5 years ago, we saw some elements of an emerging future that could be possible. We had no idea how great it could be, but we saw the promise of what could be part of it. And so we were embarking on a transition for our human capital management system, which is one of those once in a career, unless you just love that kind of work, once in a career mammoth projects. So before we even got there, we went ahead and cleaned up our entire job architecture, which is one of those projects that, IOs live for, but you also have to boil the ocean in order to really be able to set up a good ecosystem. And so a lot of companies, can't afford the investment of resources, just even time or priority to do that. So it ended up being a fantastic work. First step, we did a lot of it internally, but basing our job infrastructure on market data so that we could make sure that, we're as aligned with the constantly evolving external world as possible. And that has worked really well for us. We then launched our new HCM. We took the opportunity to start dabbling with AI inferred skills. We got to work with multiple external partners and ended up in a unique situation where we were able to look at the quality of the output of skill inferences. And I'm here to tell you that not all AI inferred skill solutions are the same or the same quality and the same robustness. And so we were able to really learn a lot about who might have a great tool, but it doesn't scale, who can do skills at scale, how many skills is too many skills, or even just not getting too nerdy into the data model, because I am not a business intelligence guru anymore, not since I comped in structural equation modeling and
Oh boy.
decades ago.
I've been there, me too.
the data intelligence has moved past my direct expertise for sure. But just even understanding that, gosh, there's different approaches to skills inference. You can go with pure AI inference. You can go with curated influenced data models. You can go with public aggregation of skills. And so what we ended up being able to do is connecting skills to all of our jobs, connecting skills to all of our employees, and really giving them a head start to kind of curating and boosting. The real question at the end of the day was, but how good is this stuff? Because we decided early on, we didn't want to just do skills for skills. This is about business enablement. So eventually we need it to be part of what fuels our people strategy and our performance success and, development and leadership and job movement internally as well as external hiring. So what we found was that there really is not like an agreed upon methodology, and vendors are all over the place as well with, do they have any demonstrations? It makes you miss the good old days when you really just could do an RFP for an assessment and you ask them for their validity results and technical documentation. There's none of that in skills.
I know.
They don't know to ask for it, Charles.
No, that's been my bread and butter for 25 years, and there's less butter on that bread right now, for sure. I'm like, what's going on? This is an important thing, and I need to be doing more of it like I used to.
Yeah.
So that was amazing description, and I'll tell you, it overlays some stuff for me. So first of all, this really does have to be a holistic view, and integrating the AI into it's great. I want to ask a little bit more questions about that, but you talked about job architecture. So one of the startups I've been working with, it's a whole job architecture driven internal promotional, software. And I was there at the very beginning and helped build that job architecture, which was really, really cool. And it uses some AI. And as part of that, we played around with how are we going to seed this platform to work kind of on its own and be seeded by, some inputs to understand how to kind of calibrate someone to a job architecture. So bringing a lexicon of skills in was critical. And, we tried ONET, and that was not fully sufficient. And we tried APIs with some of the vendors like you're talking about. Not all of them had APIs or were available, but part of the same pack of folks that you were discussing, I'm sure, and we can discuss offline. I don't like to use vendor names or anything on these things. When we API'd it and saw what the organization of skills were coming back, I mean, it was just a jumble. There were irrelevant skills. There were skills in the wrong buckets. There were skills that made you laugh, unfortunately, or cry. And we just couldn't use it. I ended up building it kind of on my own. And with the engineers, we were able to kind of use general, what LLMs know with some real guidance to support the system. So it's really cool to hear that you found some, value or usefulness in some of these solutions. And I'd like for you, if you can, to just elaborate a little bit more on the role of AI and what you're doing. I mean, it seems like it might be an entry point. And I know Christina from J&J and folks from Walmart, they're all integrating AI somehow into this. And when I talk about skills-based hiring, I often say, don't rely on the AI. The talent intelligence AI stuff isn't going to work. It's going to mislead you, per what I just said. So when I see all you big, heavy hitters that have the resources and the the directionality, which is amazing. To do this, how does AI fit in, and how do you make sure it's working responsibly, transparently, effectively, etc.? That's a mouthful, but it's important. It's really important.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing where we are today compared to when we took on the job architecture in 2020. Just the availability and the feasibility of AI has, of course, taken us to a completely different location. So as far as your first question about, the job architecture and kind of how do we navigate these challenges? I mean, you're right. A lot of skills data is like word soup. If I see one more, instance of like ice cream scooper as a skill.
Right, exactly.
And it's the same thing with like contamination for like personal characteristics, knowledge, et cetera. But for us, I feel like it's really important to always, and this is a little bit, guiding principle-ish, and something I'm working on testing with actual data is I do believe that organizations are best served by thinking about multi-source data. When we're working on the architecture, we didn't want to just, of course, we're sourcing from, curated libraries, from external partners, ONET, our own people, just in case there was anything. But like many companies, a lot of internal career profiles, traditionally are empty, unless you're, one of the big box consulting firms where your people are your business. But also cross-functional data, what's real estate using to assess, talent availability, in the markets, what's compensation using to price jobs. And so I believe truth lives somewhere in the middle of all of this. And the next big opportunity is to figure out where is it noise and where is it helpful. And I believe very few organizations are anywhere near being able to start with that topic, our company as well. But I do think that's one of the really fun questions. So just job architecture and skills and noise versus quality information. I feel you on that one, Charles. Now, AI, what an enabler. I think for us, it's all about, is there something that can match something that you're solving? And is there an AI use case that can remove the traditional obstacles that companies of any size have really had to deal with? So places where we have found immense value, I mentioned earlier, AI inferred skills and the ability to understand, the continuum of how people approach it. I've got awesome data on, some AI solutions, you have to turn over all of your data and then they give you back like some little bit of incremental capability. Other AI solutions, you don't have to turn over all of your information and it can bring immense value anyway. So those are also really important principles because, we still care a lot about privacy and security and all these things. So don't give in and think that the only way to get skills or decisioning kind of inputs is to have to open up your organization to risk. So the AI inferred skills has been incredibly helpful. We have seen really great results from job matching kinds of capabilities. You can do that in the hiring process. You can do it for career purposes. You can do it for hyper-personalized learning. We started more in the career scoping space as well as in the, more personalized development kind of spaces. We are really interested in and piloting the ability for it to help augment recruiter sourcing. And internal mobility is a huge strategy for us right now. So we're focused especially there. And, some of the outcomes that we see from, some of this piloting is an improvement to the flow of talent. For us, we're super interested in hidden talent pools, that are often missed due to poorly defined basic qualifications or traditional views of what fit looks like. What we find is that even though the AI can be a little unpredictable, I think you've said that a couple of times,
yeah.
Charles, that's also a little bit of the beauty in some of these use cases, because it's like, my gosh, that's totally an adjacent skill set or profile we would have not in a million years, would we have realized, because it doesn't necessarily like fit the mold of, who's always been in a job in the past. And so the idea that can lead to more inclusive talent pools, or more meaningful career paths, those are the places that I'm really excited. And I think some of the next places that we're going is trying to on the nerdy side. This is the Ashley nerdy side.
Mhm.
How
We love it. We love it. No worries.
well, and I would invite, all of our IO colleagues to like rally around. I think, we should have some conversations coming up at the next SIOP conference around, let's put these skills to test against some of our preferred and reliable kinds of tools. I'm playing with and testing out, inferred proficiency, not for final decisioning, but rather, is it helpful for directional support of the employee? Is it helpful for strategic workforce planning, for example? And I want to pit it against assessment data, traditional psychometric assessment data. I want to pit it against other things like that, right? And let's see, how far off are we?
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, oh my gosh. So real quick here, I'm going to ask Mayda to come back here. Mayda, we are talking to Ash, who's from Verizon. So tell us a joke about smartphones. What you got? Her jokes are pretty awful a lot of times.
Oh, darling, here's one for you. Why did the smartphone go to therapy? Because it couldn't stop comparing itself to all the other smart devices and felt like it was losing its charge. I mean, who hasn't felt a little drained sometimes, right?
Okay, that was a little weird. For a while, she was telling every joke about why did someone climb a ladder. I mean, even across different podcast episodes and stuff. So it's always fun to get that, randomness there. I'm curious. So you said job matching, and I love the internal mobility aspect of it. And I think you might be able to use a lot of your own quality data for that. I feel like I always think about it as the talent intelligence platforms that basically do sourcing or top of the funnel stuff and give you a match score based on the ether, basically, or based on a resume and a job description and maybe some stuff that you put in, and they say, oh, you're a 95% match, and whatever, there's a black box in there somewhere that's making that matching equation. It's not transparent or explainable like the algebra that we like to do for our scoring equations, right? And when I think immediately of, oh, you're using AI and your skills-based processes, maybe you're not doing that. So talk a little bit about how you're actually doing the job matching, because I can't imagine you're doing it in a way that introduces really a lot of risk,
Yeah, well, I think, again, starting with kind of the career and employee encouragement and like opening doors for development and growth, or giving employees something that they can choose to opt into, has really allowed us to get to know the data really well. And it was sort of an intentional that then, as we see where the quality is, as we see where the helpfulness is, then we start to move into things that could help us make better decisions or be more inclusive, with the hiring. So, as far as like what type of job matching, we're actually, going to be working on, again, some piloting and some comparisons of different providers and their capabilities. The HR tech, one of the really great things about it is the explosion has led to, it's very common that it's a different combination of what the vendor's trying to offer or partner on. Are you focused more on sourcing? Are you focused on a more meaningful order of candidates on a requisition, more meaningful than first in, first out, which sometimes can have, even first in, first out could have bias, even though it's so widely accepted. And so just what is it, where can it fit in your business process? And so like right now, we're going to be working on how do a couple of different approaches to recruiter utilization, how do they lead to more successful interviews? How do they lead to more inclusive, spread of talent? Do they help us with one of our internal goals of more cross-functional career paths? So it's great because you can do this and you can observe the outcomes in a fairly short period of time. I mean, even within 6 months, we see reliable and repeatable trends as far as increased applications or increased job movement or increased trends of movement out of a job family to a new space, which isn't the only definition of success. But again, that's our business strategy is we want to really promote that and grow that. So that's my answer, is like, keep on bringing all the different kinds of AI, because also the industry is like refreshing every 6 months, and partners are leapfrogging each other, right? Stuff that wasn't on the roadmap now is. And I think we just have to have like an always on, how are we going to forge the path? You know, your best logic and ability to test ROI could be your biggest decisioning factor, you know, in this environment.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I'm about to head out in a couple of weeks to HR Tech, which I go to every year, and it's a dizzying bizarre things, and it's great to absorb kind of what's going on, and it does change, and there's a lot of hype, but there's people doing good things, and that's a lot of fun for me, but it takes a little decompression for sure afterwards. So one thing I've known about Verizon, because I've known other IOs that have worked there, you know, you have a long-standing history of doing good things with assessment. What I think is really great, you know, we talk about the AI stuff, a lot of people do that. When you have some actual substantial, maybe traditional methods, even if they're couched in some nice technology, added to the equation, you know, what an additive thing, because I think a lot of companies may just rely on that top end stuff or rely on the psychometric or assessment stuff and not look at the companionship, because ultimately we've got to have companionship. And in my philosophy, the traditional assessment industry is going to get completely eaten by, you know, new techniques. I like to say that it's going to be that everything in the middle is going to fall in a hole. This may be like 10 years from now, but you're either not going to really know you're being evaluated and just you're trafficking through the ether to look for a job or whatever. And then when you are being evaluated in a way that's transparent, and you know, you're going to be completely immersed in a business simulation, interacting with other people, and those will be very flexible and easy to scale. And, you know, those are that latter one's my dream. But anyway, getting back on topic, tell us a little bit about that, you know, your assessment program and how that's gone internally. I kind of see that there's a lot of times two camps, you know, people who hate dealing with assessments. Oh, they hurt candidate experience, they take too long, that nobody likes it. I always say no one likes taking tests, which is kind of true. But and then the other side of the coin of, oh, we can use AI for efficiency, we can do this matching. A lot of times it's either or it's both, but they're not connected. And that point of connection is really important. So tell us a little bit about how that's going down for you all.
I love your word companionship. I've never heard it described that way. I was going to say it's a portfolio, right? You can't forget the portfolio, but I think I'm going to start using companionship. I love that. Yeah, it's easier for people to think like with this worldview or that worldview and hold to, you know, strong rules, and everything else is garbage, you know, or fuddy-duddy, you know, whatever. So I do think that the portfolio and companionship is the key. And I think we're doing a great job, you know, navigating that. You know, we absolutely believe in assessments. We continue to see, you know, local quality, validity, and helpfulness. Now, we are strategic about it. We've never been a company that does assessments everywhere. We do it where it really is needed and can help us, you know, with outcomes, both for the employee as well as for the work to be done. Some of the things that I think, I have two main themes, Charles, for you on this. One is most of the API integrations and partners really are not enabling the true companionship right now. There's this concept of aggregation. You know, you're never going to have a tech stack where everybody's using the same skills ontology or competency model.
Right.
And honestly, I think that's okay. I think it's painful at the moment, but you know, I think that as we have more and more, I don't know, I'm not recommending middleware, but the idea that you can have like an aggregation that you don't have to worry about, that's likely going to be what all companies need. I see some partners building it in, you know, to their HCM, so you can have one source of truth. Sometimes others have to sort of Frankenstein stitch it together. But I think the key is exactly what you said. It's being self-aware, like being aware that you are missing an opportunity if you don't have this stuff working together. If it's just about something that just informs like one step of one process, it doesn't mean that it's bad practice, but you're missing a huge opportunity to compile and help the business case as well as help the employee more. My second theme is traditionally, just in so many cases, assessments certainly can help inform qualifications, minimum qualifications for a role, and then some. But there's also, I'd like to see a higher take rate of folks using that information to help improve an employee's experience with their own onboarding, help give them a direction that they can focus on as they build their first development plans. If you know that in its simplest form, if you know that an employee is super strong in these 3 areas and is qualified in the 4th, but could use some coaching or feedback, why would we start a journey for them where we're completely ignoring that, and so just helping employees have the best possible experience. So I'd like to see more pull through with folks instead of just treating assessments like, they informed one moment of one time and then the rest of that information is thrown away.
It's about, curating data across a long period of time. And so that makes me think about another thing that I love to talk about, and I'm interested in, what you all have done with this. Is there's a lot we can learn about skills validation and such from the ed tech world or from the education world. I've had on this podcast and really been following, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's T3 initiative, the idea of STARS, skilled through alternative routes, I guess is what to call it, right? There's a lot of this going on where we're reaching into education, and even there's a thing called the Skills Validation Network that I go to their calls and talk to some of those folks. And, it's really interesting. I was attending a webinar they did, and they're talking about validating skills. They have this giant ecosystem of different ways you can validate skills all the way from school. And it's just about demonstrating these skills, durable skills, mostly we call it, right? Skills that are going to stick with you, not, learning one thing or another thing. It's input from peers. It's input from teachers. There's this thing called learning employment record, which is, this is all a little bit of pie in the sky stuff, but it's beautiful. And then they talk about how you validate skills in the organization, and promotional things, supervisory ratings, and objective things are one little nugget that's encompassed in all these other ways that they see skills being validated. And it's a beautiful, bigger picture view. We're not typically focused down on that. So, and what I found is those folks are struggling to get into the work world, and the work world's not really dipping into this, right? So hopefully in the future, there can be some collaboration. And I know, there's some people from Walmart on there, maybe Verizon's doing some things with this too, but huge opportunity, but it's such a macro shift in a lot of it that it's a heavy, heavy lift. Tell me a little bit about kind of your thoughts and what you guys may be doing on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if my nerd dream would be, that one of our next priorities could be, a real validation comparison across different skill signals, and it's even moved in the traditional, like you can, you mentioned some different records of people are pulling in like project management software, communications between, leader and employee, your LMS activity, learning activities, the ability to I like talking about careers as like collections of experiences. That's one of the reasons why horizontal movement can be so amazing, fantastic. And just the ability to even see job movement as, and what are the special projects, or what are the, like, what is the collection of experiences? And so I really think, Charles, like it used to be, again, companies would always struggle with scale, and we're talking about data at scale. Even if you are, chunking it down. And I think that very quickly, both with the help of AI, but also just because decisions in this space are going to require it, or you're going to be throwing away investments. I think we're getting to a place where more and more companies could do what is really, you and I know, a fairly simple analysis to just even know which of your data is noise, even though it might be functional for a business process, and which is actually informative for workforce planning, understanding your, inventory of talent and more. So the problem is that isn't always the most important business need, right? Because everything we do has to have ROI. So, but again, I love the idea of that consortium that you mentioned. And I also think that we have to start holding our external partners accountable for this. Just like the good old days with assessment vendors validating and showing transportability and all of that.
Yep.
We can demand this of our vendors and partners.
Yeah.
So let's shift the responsibility a little.
Yeah, and the underlying thing about the effectiveness and legal defensibility, et cetera, of any kind of prediction measure, it doesn't matter if it's AI, it doesn't matter what it is. It's the rules are the same. I think people sometimes don't understand that as, it's about the output, and that output being related to a job and fair. It doesn't matter where the output came from, really, as long as it can meet those criteria, at least in my opinion. That's important. Another quick observation is just how important it is for us to be interdisciplinary at this point, right? It used to be kind of like, oh, we're the data scientists, and people analytics people or whatever. They're living in a different world. I've collaborated with data scientists before, and they don't understand. This was a long time ago, our paradigms, and we come together though and we produce a superior product. So that's really important, and I see that happening. So I want to ask you and Mayda both a question as we're kind of winding down, and see how you both answer. And I'm gonna ask her first. Okay, so here we go. Hey Mayda, what is the most dangerous part of an organization getting into skills-based hiring and becoming a skills-based organization? I have two requests for you. Be relatively brief, but also let your hair down a little bit. You got a really nice personality, so let that shine.
Oh, darling, thank you for the compliment. Now, when it comes to the most dangerous part of an organization diving into skills-based hiring, it's the risk of asterisk tokenism. Picture this. They drop degree requirements like it's a hot trend, but don't actually change their hiring practices or internal culture to support diverse talent. So organizations need to ensure they have the right infrastructure, training, and mindset to back up that skills-based hiring approach.
But what's your quick answer as we kind of wind down? I got one more question for you after this, and then we'll both get back to our busy days.
I actually think the most dangerous thing is to pretend like it's not happening, to not participate, and to not help move the industry forward. I think those are actually the most, and I know that's not what, flavor that probably folks usually say, but I think that's actually the doom to our field and to honestly best practice. By forging the path, loving the problem, pick your metaphor or cliche, we are the ones who are all individually as well as a collective, group in the world, talent professionals. We are defining the future. We're defining what the need is. We are setting the standards, but we need more people to realize that, because, the way we move the field forward may not look the same now that, all these different things in our environment are here. So don't wait, have opinions, figure out what would need to be true, and don't lower your standards either, but be prepared to disrupt yourself. So there's a little bit of pontificating for you, Charles.
That's really good. And actually, you have some kind of ESP, because my last question I was going to, ask you is, what advice do you have for talent acquisition or talent leaders in organizations about this? But I think you just answered that pretty well. So as a send off here, I'm going to ask Mayda to answer that question and see what she comes up with, and I'll get her to be brief, and I'm going to ask her to be sassy. That might actually bring her out a little bit, so let's see. Hiya, Mayda. So I just asked Ash what advice she had for talent leaders across the board. Big picture, what advice do you have about this topic if they wanted to get started or they're in process of doing it? Speak only about 2 to 3 sentences and be a little sassier. Bring out your personality more.
Oh, honey, if talent leaders want to dive into skills-based hiring, they better roll up those sleeves and get ready to shake things up. First off, ditch the degree requirements. It's 2024, not 1924. Focus on skills and potential instead of playing the old pedigree game. And remember, if you're not measuring your progress, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. Now go out there and make some magic happen. Sparkles.
Okay, that was pretty good. At least the sparkles. What a great way to wrap this up with sparkles. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ash. You're doing great stuff. You're in a great part of the world. It's with me, and we are copacetic on a lot of this stuff. So this wisdom that you and Mayda and me too have put out there today, I think is super valuable and exciting.
Awesome. Charles, keep encouraging everybody forward. You're an important connection point, and cross-functional scientist, practitioner, internal, external, data side consulting, assessments, talent, performance, like keep us all talking with each other. It's about the end game now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks. I'll let you get back to hopefully a good weekend.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys. I really appreciate it. You have a good one.
Got it. Okay, talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.